And we're live. What's up, Ducks fans? After a huge win against the Chicago Blackhawks, Ducks take the game 6-3. Yes, we're a couple hours late. Somebody decided he had to work today.
I can't help it, guys. I'm sorry. We got in here as quick as we could. I mean, it's not too late. We were lucky. It's a matinee game. So I mean, for you guys, it's earlier than me. So hey, I mean, we can't complain too much.
No, not too much to complain about. Especially, I've been in a great mood all day with the Ducks whooping on the Blackhawks. It was nice to see them actually get all the way up to 4-0 at one point, and it was cute to hear all the "Let's Go Hawks" chants in Honda Center. It was just fun to see that kind of drown away at the end. I always love that. I can't stand Chicago, man.
No, I mean that's kind of drowned away all season because they've been awful. So I think Michelle Drinenberg put out a tweet today saying how Chicago's they've let in 4 more goals 22 times this season, which and I tweeted back. I said I think I can hear in the distance the faint sound of a bandwagon emptying out. So that's what it seems like in Chicago. I mean, they still travel well. Don't get me wrong, and there's still some hardcore fans, but kind of feels like that dynasty is ending with this season.
Those fans that are hanging around and are true fans, they understand the team, they understand the sport, they understand what it takes to win.
Yeah.
My buddy Craig lives in Chicago, and he and I were texting today, and it's like, it's unbelievable there's people calling for Bowman to get out. It's like, you have 3 Stanley Cups.
Yeah, that's
in
bad.
A decade. What are you talking about? What are you talking? Would you not understand what it takes to win? Yeah, eventually it ends. It's just what happens.
Yeah, and you can even ask for anything more than what they've had. I think anybody would be happy with the success that they've had over the last few years. I mean, it's just insane. I mean, they were talking about being a dynasty team, being one of the best teams in the history of the National Hockey League, and now people are kind of jumping ship saying, "Oh, fire Bowman because we're losing." Well, I mean, it's going to happen, especially when you sign Taves and Kane to long-term deals, which, I mean, I guess they're worth it, but it makes it difficult for you to really do anything. And look at what they've done with limited cap space. The guys who have moved out of that team, Dustin Byfuglien used to be a part of that team. Brendan Saund's been moved out and moved back in. Artemi Panarin's been moved out. Multiple guys have come in and out of that team, and they were still competitive until this season. It's ridiculous that people are saying, let's fire him.
They won a cup with Antti Niemi.
Yeah.
All right, that should tell you right there.
Yeah.
But this is not a Chicago podcast. I can't stand anything about that team. I do like some of the players on that team individually. Like if I were to, I would love some of them on the Ducks, of course.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I would need them to lose every single time because I was one of the very many unfortunate many, I should say, that were at the Ducks' home game loss in Game 7 a couple of years ago. So that was not good.
No.
But moving on, as that's obviously still a bitter taste in my mouth. Let's get to some of our pregame notes before we hop into this game. Kind of seeing the nice rotation on defense happen again, Eddie. It was good to see Pettersson staying in. This time Bosch sits and Bieksa comes on. Carlisle and Yanni decide to keep Montour and Fowler together and Manson and Lindholm together, thankfully. Especially that Montour-Fowler pairing, which we'll get to here in a little bit. But Vermette, JT Brown, and as I just mentioned, Boschman were scratched today. Derek Grant slots in on that 4th line with Chimera and Kelly. That line was effectively awful today. I don't know what it was, but that was not a good line.
They're fast. They brought in for speed, right? They're not supposed to be bad.
So, I mean, I know your 4th line, classically the 4th line was just like your grinders and fighters, like the goon line, right?
Yeah.
They go out and they're the checking line. But nowadays, in today's NHL, you got to be able to roll 4 lines.
You got to have a skilled 4th line because if you have the grit and the goony type of 4th line, and you're going up against another team's skilled 4th line, that's an easy matchup for that team any day of the week.
Oh, exactly. And that's why it's not a bad idea to bring guys up, from your AHL team and slot them in on a 4th line.
Yeah.
I mean, why not put skill across the lineup? So many teams just don't trust their young guys. But anyway, Grant, Chimera, and Kelly, hope we see less of you. I mean, I don't know how much. I mean, Grant had a good game last game, but then in getting slot with Chimera and Kelly, I guess it's a little different than playing up with the big boys.
Yeah, exactly. But we talked about how he kind of just gets thrown in any spot where a guy gets hurt. So now he goes on the 4th line because obviously gets off his back and he doesn't get put on the 1st line. We saw him throughout most of the season on the second line with Silfverberg and Cogliano. So he's just that guy for this team where we kind of just put him wherever he needs to go. I mean, he had a good game today, so I can't complain. And you don't really expect him to be a first-line center, so it's hard to be too harsh on him for what he did last game.
No, man, it's just interesting the way that all works out, though. Honestly,
yeah. The
other good news for go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, it's interesting the role that he's had because I don't think anybody's expected him to be a big piece of this team. He's definitely been better than anybody could have imagined he would be. I thought he would still be around even in the lineup at this point in the season. I
mean, he was one of the leading goal scorers early on, right?
Yeah, he was a key part of this team. So. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's like we talked about last show, too, that we would think he's going to be around.
Yeah.
The other good news, too, is Gibby gets another start, so that's good. He's healthy. No one hurt him last game, so he goes into this game just as injury-prone as ever, but he made it through all three periods in this game, too. I'm being sarcastic, of course. Of course I want him to be healthy and playing. It's just there's so many people out there expecting to be hurt. As, myself included, any little bump, you kind of just like, oh, come on, please.
Yeah.
But he came up huge in this game. A couple of massive stops, and we definitely got to talk about Gibby at the end of this too, and his candidacy for a Vezina, as you and I have talked. It may sound like we're being homers, but I mean, honestly, that guy's been playing lights out.
Yeah, and I don't think he's in the primary discussion, but when you hear, especially where I am, it's a lot of Toronto Maple Leafs news. So you hear a ton about Freddie Anderson and people saying he should be in the discussion for the Vezina. And I think if you consider Freddie, there's a big list of other guys you can consider, and John Gibson is definitely a part of that. The way he's played this season, his numbers really back that up. I think the only thing that you can kind of look at, and unfortunately that seems to be not the sole determinant, but a big factor in the Vezina is wins. And I think that's where he's kind of lacking. But you can't, that's team-based, a lot of it. So I hope they're moving away from that because I think Gibby definitely is in the discussion. It's going to be hard to bump out Rene or Vasilevsky, but you got to give him a little bit more credit than what he's getting right now.
No, absolutely. But the Ducks did rely on him a bunch in this game. Let's hop into the first period here. The Ducks with the first power play of the game in the first period, it was a new look that we haven't seen before, at least not that I can remember in any recent memory. Fowler and Montour at the points, Getzlaf down low with Henrique and Raquel, and that looked beautiful and made the power play dangerous, and they would convert on it with Raquel getting his 27th on a really pretty give and go feed with Getzlaf there down. Basically made it 2-on-1 down low. And Raquel was able to zip it home right through the wickets of Forsberg.
Yeah, and I mean, it's nice to see them changing things up on the power play. Obviously, it worked out on this occasion. And, for Raquel and Getzlaf to have this chemistry this year, it's been a revelation for the Ducks to have them working so well together. And now, obviously, translating into the power play in this game. But how many times in the last few games have we seen these types of plays from Getzlaf and Raquel, and it usually leads to the puck in the back in that for Raquel. I mean, this is his 5th goal in his last 3 games, so he's hotter than pretty much anybody on the Ducks right now. And we had a lot of people who picked Raquel as the Ducks' first goal scorer in the Forever Mighty 3 Stars leaderboard. So I think a lot of people were happy that he ended up getting the first goal.
I mean, I know I was. It's just like get the puck to him. I mean, he's got the hot stick. You got to give it to him. But then we lead right after that goal. The Hawks get a huge break. Puck gets tied up with a ref. It creates a scoring chance for Kane and Saad. Gibby, on his side, puck goes over him. And then Fowler is able to tuck it back between Gibby's pads. Everyone's crashing the crease. And everyone takes a collective deep breath as these Hawks all of a sudden would just turn it on at moments in this game. And that was one of the moments that everyone was kind of like, just please stay out of the net, please stay out of the net.
Well, they've got the talent to really do that. I mean, they haven't played well consistently this season, but they still have those guys in the lineup where they can, for brief spurts in games, take over. And we saw that, when the Ducks were coasting, when they were up 4-0, Chicago just took over the game and made it difficult for the Ducks. And we saw it at this point, too. How many times do we see Gibby laying on his back and somehow he keeps the puck out of the net? There's probably a running count of at least 50, 60 times of that happening so far this season. So, it's worrying too when you see him go down like that. You never know if he's going to get up slow, especially with the injuries he's had this season.
No, it's true. So everyone was excited about that great save, and then guess who gets on the board? Right out, just not too long after that.
Yeah, Corey Perry is finally seems to have kicked it into gear. I don't want to say that because I think I've said it about 4 or 5 times this season where he looks like he's finally gotten back to the Corey Perry we're used to, and then he goes on a stretch where he just kind of struggles for a bit. But this was by far the most vintage Corey Perry goal I've seen this season. I mean, he just takes it down low, spins in front. I mean, Osterley does do a good job of doing nothing there and letting him walk right out front and score. But yeah, this was definitely vintage Corey Perry.
He was so concerned about Perry passing that puck off to Raquel.
Yeah.
He just let Perry completely get in front of Forsberg, do a spinorama, and get that puck tucked under the arm on Forsberg. But that play from Getzlaf to Perry, you see that pass a lot from the Ducks. Getzlaf to Perry in that same spot down low, and Perry drives the net like that. It was great to see it go in for Perry there. I mean, he really needs to kick up that scoring for the Ducks, and it looks like you said, we don't want to say he found his scoring touch, but Corey Perry's been back for a couple of games.
Yeah, and we need it. I mean, this is kind of his time of year, really. I mean, how many times have we seen him kick it into gear in the second half of the season and play out like lights out? I mean, it happens a lot for him. It's kind of his trademark. You know, I don't think we're going to see the Corey Perry of old where he just lights it up for the rest of the season, but it's nice for him to actually have these types of games and make a huge difference and really start gelling on that top line with Getzlaf and Raquel. I mean, it's important to the Ducks' success that he continues to have games like these.
Oh, no, it absolutely is. And then kind of the rest of this period was a bit back and forth. The Ducks got caught standing around a little bit. They had a couple of chances, but they also were forced to kill off a couple of penalties. And they kind of let Anthony Duclair, I mean, at times in this game, he was more dangerous than the big names on Chicago. You saw Duclair just floating around all over the place. He's got that speed, and he looked dangerous in the first, but the Ducks would get out of the first period with a 2-0 lead over the Hawks, out-shooting Chicago 11-10 before we go into the second.
Yeah, and Duclair has that history coming over from Arizona, does he not? I mean, he's the Duck killer for the majority of his career with Max Domi with the Coyotes, so I'm not surprised that he's the guy that was turning things on for the Hawks when really nothing was going right for them in the first period. So he has a history of being a thorn in the Ducks' side.
Yeah, there was that season where Domi and Duclair were just basically doing whatever they wanted to Anaheim, and that's when everyone thought that Arizona was all of a sudden going to be rising up. The way that everyone thought Edmonton was rising up until this season, right? They had a good season. They had young guys playing well. I know they missed the playoffs. They had a bunch of young guys coming up, and then they all kind of fell off. But, I mean, it just goes to show you, though, that Duclair still has that skill and speed in situations, and you got to pay attention to him. And, of course, now he's on the Hawks with guys like Kane and Taves, so it kind of spreads out the talent there. But the Ducks would eventually get on the board again early in the second period. But I got to talk about this first. This came out of nowhere. Kessler and Taves have a go off the face-off. I don't know where Taves thought it was a great idea to fight Ryan Kessler. I mean, it wasn't like this was heavyweights going at it and bombs being thrown. But you don't ever see Captain Serious drop the gloves. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and to that extent, too, I mean, Ryan Kessler does on the odd occasion as well, but you don't see him. He's not a guy who fights all the time, especially, you're up 2-0. It's early in the second. Nothing had really happened to warrant a fight. And maybe it's Taves trying to kick things into gear for his team. I think that's probably the most realistic answer. But, yeah, I mean, it was kind of crazy to see these two guys go out. It wasn't really an eventful fight, other than the fact that, I mean, we put out a GIF that got some traction in the middle of the game where Kessler clocks Taves with a pretty good right and knocks him back a bit. Other than that, it wasn't eventful, but you never really see Taves get involved in those kind of things, and that kind of tells you what kind of season the Blackhawks are having.
No, and on top of that, I think the last fight that I remember Ryan Kessler being in was honestly the unfortunate one against Domi, where Domi caught him with an uppercut. So yeah, I was like, maybe that's why Kessler shied away from fighting for a little bit, because that doesn't feel great. And but anyway, now he's tough. But it was good, and it was a good move on his, because they both got to take a break for 5 minutes. And anytime you can get one of the top centers and two-way players on Chicago off the ice for any amount of time is a good move. But then it kind of was like that was going to be a spark, but it turns out, you got to